Okay, everyone, welcome to Talk Recovery Radio. You're listening to us live on Facebook Live. And if you're on the radio, 100.5 FM, thanks for listening. You're listening to last week's show because we're 1 week behind. My name is Giuseppe Ganci, and I'm here in studio with my co host, Mr. Darren Gaylor. Hi, Darren.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for
Yeah,
tuning in.
hello. Yeah, nice to
I,
see
I,
you, Darren.
I gotta say, as we were starting the show, waiting for to go live on Facebook, I got that our intro song running through my head.
Yeah. I missed our intro, so we can't play it, or else Facebook will. The
Yeah,
radio, we're allowed to play the music, but not on Facebook Live. They've got
right.
these,
So if you're listening to the radio right now, this is a full discussion and interview. And as soon as we get back into the studio, whenever that may be, we'll bring back the music again.
Yeah, we haven't even heard anything from the studio in a while. I mean, obviously, there's lots of microphones in there, so people talking moistly in microphones might not be a good idea during these times.
Not so much.
So we're here from the office. I'm in my office. Darren's at his home office, so right on. It's been quite the weekend for those of you that follow our social media channels. We're really trying to keep the spirit of clean, sober, and proud alive during COVID. And so we had a bit of a rally on, not a bit, we had a rally on Sunday. And we kind of, because Sunday would have been Vancouver Pride, where we usually organize the Clean, Sober, and Proud events, which is bringing substance free spaces to Pride. And it's gotten really big, and it's one of the coolest parties during Pride. And it always includes a float. So this year we did a march, and there was no actual Vancouver Pride Parade because obviously, the masses of people in COVID. So we had a small group of people, and it was really cool because Darren, the energy that you experienced during Pride Day with the million people, we
Yeah,
still felt it, and it was just like 30 or 40 of us, and
right on.
so it was pretty cool. We made the news and all
Yeah,
that, and
yeah. Saw you guys on the news.
yeah. Oh, you did it right on.
Oh yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, great. Well, it was a big deal because um, despite what people say, recovery is not a priority in the overdose crisis. It just simply isn't. And why and what's wrong with that? I mean, the arguments between Twitter, Facebook, social media, healthcare, evidence-based science, like I don't know all the answers. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. Neither are you. But like I've just been to certain meetings where you talk about recovery, and it's like how dare you, like it's really bizarre situation. And Health Canada literally told us like recovery is not the mandate for addiction in Canada. Harm reduction is. And we just sat there as a group of us and we're like, what does that even mean? And so we recoverymonthcanada.ca, people have, hopefully you know about it already. Only 20 MPs have actually said yes. So that means like 300 have said pretty much no. We want to make September Recovery Month Canada. It's a unanimous consent we're looking for. It's simply an optic to just, hey, let's just start talking about recovery nationally. And it's not against anything. It's just an idea of like COVID has a recovery plan. How come addiction doesn't? It's just so mind-boggling when you like break it down. It's like it's bizarre, Darren.
Well, I mean, we've been having these conversations about stigma of addiction, and I don't see what the issue is as far as having something that is about a solution to a major problem in Canada, across the country, that just has a
Yeah,
day to
yeah,
celebrate all walks of life, all people coming out of the darkness into the light in every which way fashion, so that their stories can be told to the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people and families that have a current, family member or person in their lives that does not know how to get out of their situation. It's not just about the downtown east side. It's not just about the,
yeah,
the vulnerable demographic of people. It's about everyone right now that is going, I don't know what to do about so and so.
I had no idea about recovery, when my life tanked. Like I had no one told me what recovery was, and maybe you might know about it through some TV movies, which isn't even really, what recovery is. And it's just bizarre that nobody wants to raise the awareness of recovery. And here's an example of the problem. And we need to get into our guests, but so a couple of days ago, I think it was yesterday, our Minister of Mental Health and Addiction, Judy Darcy, she's a friend of mine. She's our MLA in Arnarney. She's lives down the street here, and she made an announcement of $10 million for harm reduction, increase in services. More money for consumption sites, more money for safe inhalation rooms. And I'm like, well, that's great. Okay. And then weeks ago, she made an announcement, $15 million for recovery services and treatment. And it's like, why are they separate announcements? How come no one's asking that? Like, I looked at the post and I'm like, this is the problem. Like, why is one announcement done on one day that's for recovery, which doesn't get shared by all these harm reduction enthusiasts across Twitter? Like none of them are sharing it. Like all these like safe supply, I don't even know what to call them, but like they're not sharing that. But and they're all sharing Judy's announcement about money for safe consumption sites. Like this is I don't know why people don't understand this is the problem. Why Health Canada told us to get the heck out of the room. We don't support recovery unless you're reducing harm. Like we don't want to talk to you. Like that's what they told me, like face to face. And now we got our Minister of Health doing it too. It's like this is your money and this is your money, and let's all fight about who's should get that money on Twitter. Like it's ridiculous. Why couldn't it just be one announcement? Here's $25 million for the full continuum of care. Like why are we celebrating in unity how to get through this? And we're still every day. Like today I saw so many shares on Twitter about Judy's announcement for the 10 mil for harm reduction, and none of them shared the 15 mil. Well, I would say none of them, but you know what I mean, right? I don't want to be, none, hardly any, put it that way. So, yeah, we're, can't say it on radio, but that's the problem. The government pits us together.
And I mean, I have a singular story, my own personal recovery, and I try to stay in a stance that doesn't just define that as the only way and the right way and anything like that. And there's always been this weird bridge ever since the opioid epidemic was labeled such. All the heads seem to have come away from anything that has to do with abstinence or the community type of therapy, and they have their reasons. They have their belief systems behind why that isn't going to help an overdose crisis, and they're sticking with it. And it's sad. It's just so frustratingly sad that it's viewed as a non-solution to an overdose crisis.
Hope you like what you're hearing. We come to you every Thursday on 100.5 FM and here on Facebook Live due to COVID out of the studio. We're powered by New West Recovery, which is made up of Last Door Recovery Center and Westminster House, Canada's recovery community for youth and adults. So shout out to Last Door and Westminster House. And you can catch us on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, talkrecoveryradio.com, 6 years of shows, hundreds of guests, thousands of listeners. So really appreciate all of our listeners and our viewers. So thank you very much. And today we've got a guest that we've been trying to get on the show for a while. So we're glad to have him here today. Darren, who are we talking recovery with today?
Yeah, absolutely. We get to talk recovery with Chris Call as he makes his way onto the screen here. There he is. Hello, Chris.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How you doing? Just introducing you. So you're a two-time cross-Canada cyclist. Let's throw in filmmaker, motivational speaker, and the founder of Inspire by Example, inspirebyexample.ca, and also recovering opioid user. Welcome to the Talk Recovery, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great resume, by the way, and an opiate user.
Recovering opioid user. So, I mean, you must have, obviously, as a speaker, as somebody who's trying to, help in the process of ending stigma and toured literally across our country, you've gone over and over, the story of the how I became an addict. A little background there, traumatic childhood. Like, what was your situation like?
Let's see, a little bit of a story, but shortly after high school, my dad, he was a paramedic for 27 years. I mean, he was my hero. He was diagnosed with Huntington's disease shortly after. I think it was about 17, 18. It was 18 when it started to kick in, and he ended up losing his job, losing his license, and started giving up on himself and started drinking very heavily. So that compounded with the Huntington's disease made for a very turbulent several years, where he just gave up on himself, and he started trying to take his own life on a consistent basis. And then there were times where I'd walk in the door and come home, and he didn't remember who I was and thought I was an intruder at that, and like things like and then when he started trying to take his own life on a consistent basis, like I was every day, I was just on hyper stress, like worried about what I was going to come home to. And then it got to a point where it devolved so much where he asked me to help him with it, which broke my heart. And within all that was between 17, 18 to about 22 is how old I was when he passed. But it was just the trauma, and I had a hard time figuring out how to deal with that. And so I started using Percocet to just calm me down enough I could carry on with my day and get what I needed to get done. But I mean, that coping mechanism was obviously the worst, and now in retrospect, one of the best things that happened to me. But I mean, so that after he passed away, though, that was it. I mean, I went off the deep end and started using 580 oxys a day, 80 milligram oxys a day for 2 years, and lost everything that meant anything to me about it.
I mean, I couldn't imagine, like you say, the amount of stress, the grief, anticipating, what kind of shape your dad's going to be in, coming home, trying to be a regular teenager at the time. But it also, as you described it almost sounds like somebody, typical story of somebody in addiction, where the other person involved in their life doesn't know what to do, minimal resources, just trying to cope with it. Do you look back and see, like, were there resources available for your dad, like, to just lose his job, and like, was there any type of help and therapy and support going on for him at the time?
No, not that I remember. It was a slow, kind of gradual process where he, like, as his kind of mind started, Huntington's is a neuro-degenerative disease, so his mind started kind of slowly breaking down. And then after he lost his job, I mean, that was really when the alcohol use started really picking up, and that just magnified the Huntington's by 10. And but there was no therapy at all, unfortunately, at least that he pursued within it, that really made the burden of it all any easier.
Man, I'm so sorry to hear that. What was the situation like for you then? Like, how did you get your first use? Tell us a little bit about that. Like, I mean, you're compounded with grief and loss. Did you seek it out at school? Did you know somebody that had it? Was it a prescription? How did you get that first Percocet or Oxy that you took?
I actually sought it out. I mean, I'd had dental surgery when I was in high school, and kind of tried my very first time there. And it was I don't know, it just felt like it just relaxed me enough that I was just looking for something to make me just calm me down, because I'm just operating at such a high level of stress every day. And then, yeah, again, like you said, the anticipation of not knowing what I'm walking into, it could be the worst day of my life every single day. So and then ironically, I'm still friends with the guy who actually got them today, and he's doing well and everything like that. But yeah, he actually warned me about kind of the dangers of opioids, but I just didn't care at that point.
It didn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, amazing. What happened then? I mean, I was reading a little bit of the background. Like, obviously, tolerance builds. You know, you need more, you get more, and you were using how much on a daily basis?
I mean, it started out with Percocet, and that, like, the tolerance builds up pretty quickly. But at that, there was just, once I kind of got the hook in, there was just never enough. So, I mean, I was doing sometimes up to 15, 20 perks a day. And then I discovered Oxys, which was just like, okay, I can, I mean, and then I gravitated to that very quickly. And I mean, I still remember my very first withdrawal, and I mean, it was it was a rough ride.
Were you getting the oxys on the street? Were you getting them prescribed to you? Like, were you lying to the doctor to get prescriptions? What was your story in getting the oxys and perks?
I was getting them off the street. They were never prescribed to me at all. But that said, I mean, I used to grab from people who were being prescribed them and then were diverting them. So I mean, it was, I don't know, that was kind of common practice with at least with my experience within back in the day in the opioid.
And so you then, your life is completely destroyed and so forth. That journey to, to start your detox, and did you go to treatment? Did somebody intervene on you? Did you just wake up one day and say, yeah, this is a bad idea? Like, what was that for you? Did you get into and also did you get into heroin and street drugs?
No. So the escalation of it was like my dad, because he left me in a pretty good position after he passed away, where, I mean, he left me his home and money and everything like that. But I didn't care at that point in time. I ended up losing, like, through that 2 years, I mean, I spent over 6 figures on pills. And then I lost the house that he left me. And I remember sitting there thinking in my basement that I just stared at a wall unit for hours, just thinking about how bad I messed up and how I just lost everything that meant anything to me. And that started my journey towards kind of seeking out a solution. I went down, my mom lives in Phoenix, Arizona. She's a nurse and her husband's a physician's assistant. So I went down there actually, and she had no idea that I kind of got hooked. And I went down there kind of trying to go cold turkey on it and detox it out. And that didn't pan out that well. I ended up actually coming home early and then falling right back into pills. And then short time after that was when I'm like, okay, you need to figure this out. And I wasn't really aware of any options that were available. Like, I had no idea about any kind of therapy, especially knowing what I know now. I mean, it's just like, why didn't you? But hindsight's 2020. But anyway, so like, I didn't end up injecting. People I had actually started using with hit a point where they started to, and that was kind of where I was like, I'm not going down. I can't go down that road. And thankfully I was able to kind of recognize that. And then knowing that I tried going cold turkey twice, wasn't able to do it. I ended up going on methadone because, to be honest, I didn't know any other way to really go about it. And I'd heard about that from people I used with. And so that was its own journey in itself. I mean, I was on methadone for 5 years, and I could go, I could talk.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of the basis and the foundation of our show and our conversations is, what were your options at the time when you were realizing, the detriment of your addiction, and, where do we hear what the solutions are? Like you say, methadone, that's what people do. It's how we deal with opioid addiction, and it's a safe way to sort of transition without going cold turkey. But I mean, for most people, in hindsight, it's just something new. It's just the new thing that's difficult to get off of. And in my own personal experience, it's way harder to get off of than the heroin that I was using, in the first place. Was it, like, now in hindsight, was there benefits for you? Did it get you, stable enough to start making some changes, or was it just another drug that you now needed help to get off of again?
It was it was its own journey. I could write a book on my methadone days. I mean, when I started out, it stabilized my opioid use disorder, like my dependency. But kind of the nature of addiction is when you kind of stabilize one thing, you kind of gravitate towards something else. And then I started actually using cocaine a lot through probably the first year of it. And then, and then blew even more money on that, which put me into an even worse position. So that actually, I had a doctor who, I'm actually writing a book right now, and there's a whole chapter on it about my medical doctors. But my first doctor, he didn't seem to care that much. Like he was just going through the motions. I remember the guy talking more about his cottage and never talking to me about much. So, and then just by chance, so I ended up getting a job as a cashier at Walmart, and started kind of stabilizing, bringing an income in and kind of working that way. But my schedule changed there, and I had to switch doctors because I just couldn't get to him anymore. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. My second doctor, who I love her to death. She's an amazing woman. She actually through kind of over time as we got to know each other, she just got to know me personality, and then she actually sat me down one day and gave me like a heart to heart about like your samples are hot or dirty every time you're coming in, and like she's like, what's going on? And so I just kind of explained where I was at there, and then she started planting seeds of like kind of hope in my brain. Like every time I was leaving, it was just a positive. She like say, oh, you got this. And it was just those little things. And when that, like in retrospect, now when I look back on it, that one person that I'm seeking help from that I felt could help me out actually seemed to care about me when nobody else did, not friends, not like some of my family, but they kind of wrote me off too. And then the one person I felt could help me was giving me this positive kind of feedback and kind of giving me a bit of self-confidence in myself, which over time pay dividends in terms of turning my thinking around and how I was going about it. So after that, I actually stopped drugs completely. But that said, it was its own journey getting off of it in itself. I mean, I went up to 120 milligrams, and I didn't need to be that high, but it was giving me the high from opioids that I initially got. So, over time, just developing a good relationship with her, and she helped me like listen to me when I was saying that, oh yeah, like I want to taper. And I want to get off of this. I mean, there's a whole story about how I got to the point of tapering. I was working my job as a cashier, and long story short, a guy frisbeed this hard plastic sign into my nose and cut my nose open to say 50 cents on 3 apples. And I'm like,
we're not laughing, but like,
no, it's just, that was like when someone asked me about what was your turning point, that's it.
Yeah, people in recovery, we laugh at the most, the wrong time, but it's just I don't know, we've been through so much. It's just like, yeah, whatever. So how many years ago was this when you started when did you start tapering? 5 years ago, 2 years ago? When?
I've been off for 7 now, and that was a 1.5-year process to taper. So I got off on January 20th, 2014. So around
2014. Okay.
2012, 2013.
And was it difficult to have a conversation to taper? Like, was there question? Like, because nowadays it's like it's pretty hard to taper off of any type of out if you have a physician. I mean, it's just it's difficult. Did you have any difficulty back then? Like the doctor's like, okay, you want to taper? That's fine.
No, she was quite supportive of it, but she was also very conscious that I was ready to taper. Like, I mean, mental barrier or bridge you got to cross to kind of be like, okay, I'm squared away, and I want this.
I want to get into like what's going on for you now, but before we lose topic of the past, we'll use the second half of the show for what's going on now. I just want to talk to you about your Percocets and your Oxys, and I know that you're an advocate. You were in Ottawa with me, well, not with me, but you were in Ottawa when I was there during the drug users conference. You're involved in drug policy stakeholder conversations across the country. So this is kind of a loaded question, but I'm sure you'll have a great answer for it. So a lot of people in regards to safe supply, which I'm not against, I'm kind of not for, I'm just kind of somewhere where it's like, I think we need to really think about this and do more. We can't just, like somebody's on Twitter yesterday shared a big safe supply person shared, Switzerland's safe supply numbers and how, they got rid of their overdose crisis because of their safe supply. But the catch is Switzerland doesn't have a peer-based, low barrier safe supply. They have a very high barrier safe supply philosophy where you have to do counseling. You can't just get drugs and your SRO delivered to you. Like, it's a high barrier. And this person knows that, but is still sharing like Vancouver's safe supply is somewhat like Switzerland's. And if you're watching and listening, like Vancouver's safe supply model is nothing like Switzerland's safe supply model, nothing. So here you are having, oxys given to you every day, which is practically safe supply. So how does that differ? Giving somebody hydromorph, like you were given, you were buying, safe supply. Like, did your life, like people are saying safe supply will make people's lives more better and less grind. Did you have less grind in your life when you were doing legit oxys?
Oh, no, that was a hot mess when I was doing that.
It was a hot mess.
But I mean, like, I could make an argument, like even methadone is kind of some. The thing with kind of lining it up with other countries is there's a different dynamic in every single country, and you got to play that factor in when we're talking about here. It's a different culture and a different environment for sure. But as far as like my own personal thing, no, my oxy days were brutal. But I mean, methadone days, I mean, that's you're given the same kind of opioid, well, not same kind of, but you're given an opioid to kind of stabilize out, and that helped me enough to get me the ball rolling. And then somewhere down the line, it was just like, okay, like you gotta start fixing some of these issues that got you here in the first place. I mean, at this stage in the game with the overdose crisis, I'm for trying new things, but again, they have to be evidence-based, and we got to be as pragmatic as humanly possible when we're floating ideas and creating policies that could go one way or the other.
Yeah.
But, sorry, I don't mean to keep it generic and politically correct. It's just
no, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think it's so important, like what you just said. I mean, I would never discount a safe supply solution to someone that has OD'd, dozens of times from the toxic street stuff that they're getting. I would never discount, methadone or Suboxone treatment to somebody who wants, like, they want to get a job and get out of the area that they're living in, but just can't get past, kicking dope and have a little structure in their life. But as all of these are like, and then what? And then what? And just as your story, where it wasn't just a doctor handing over a script to you, it was someone asking about, the rest of your life and calling you on, what else is going on, and asking more questions. Because what's the point on tapering someone who's using cocaine and smoking crack? Like that needs to be held accountable if we're going to successfully taper you, and then And then what? And then what's the next solution? What's the next therapy? All of us need that. What next? What's after? And sometimes we figure it out for ourselves. And like, it sounds like your story, you know, sort of happened as you're detoxing or you know, going through it, where it wasn't enough. The goal of just getting off dope or methadone wasn't enough. There has to be something more. And that is what, you know, most of the conversations don't allow for, you know, when we sink into all the harm reduction. It's just, here it is. We'll see you next Tuesday. Here it is. And there's no talk about you as a human being. What are your motivations? What do you want to do? What's your ultimate goal? Like, what's more than just kicking the dope that you're on? And that's the sadness. What happened for you at that point? This is where you came into the concept of cycling across Canada, like as you're kicking dope. Like, how, what did you see at that point? What did you see in your future?
Well, one, my doctor, I'm of the opinion that you need caring physicians to be in that role, who develop that trust for one another, not one way, or one, it has to be kind of between you. And then once, I mean, just understanding that she had my best interest in mind was like, okay, that's enough for me to listen to her and help, and she can help guide me because she's a professional, and which she did an amazing job. Where the cycling came into play was, so after that day, after I took that sign to the face in Walmart so the dude could save 50 cents on 3 apples, I just walked to the bag. I'm like, give me my papers. I'm out of here. I'd been there for 3 years. I'm just like, this is it. And then I went home, and I remember sitting there and staring at the wall unit for a couple hours, just thinking about my life. And I'm like, I'm tired. At that point in time, I mean, I went 2 years without gas in my home. And then I went, 2 years stealing my food to eat. So, I mean, I'd whittled down to 139. So after I took the sign to the face, like, that was kind of where like, I'm just like, I can't live like this anymore. I'm tired of just surviving. I'm tired of staring at a clock all day, just wishing I was anywhere else. And like, I just wanted more from my life. And I'm like, well, you got to start somewhere. So I ended up actually that night started trying to figure out kind of where I want, like, if I could have my ideal life, like what would it be? So I wrote down actually these 4 boxes with my passions, interests, hobbies, and stuff I knew I hated, just to know what to cancel out. And then, like, I was an athlete before the opioids, and so, I mean, but I also wanted to travel again, and I was tired of kind of having that ball and chain around me that I couldn't travel because of the opioids. And it was just, it was the want to do more than it was anything else. And so I was like, okay, well. So I started, that's when I walked into my doctor, and it's like, I want to do this. And she was very supportive of me and helped me. Like, I mean, that was a long process getting off methadone, because like you say, you drop 5 milligrams sometimes and you're feeling it like maybe 19 hours. So you kind of got to go back up too sometimes just to kind of level off, and then keep going down and down and down. And I mean, I went down to 0.5 milligram by the very end before I made the leap off.
And people try to logically explain addiction. It's like, we'll never logically explain why we do this to ourselves, whether it's methadone, drugs, and so forth. So, appreciate the courage of your story and sharing, what's happened to you and how you got through it and so forth. So you went from, using all these Percocets and Oxys and a 5-year ordeal. I wouldn't call it a battle, but an ordeal with methadone. So now here you are, on Talk Recovery Radio, and you're making your way around the country. You cycled across the country, and so forth. There's a movie. It's a movie, right? Or a documentary. It's, okay. So what is that all about, and so forth?
So like back to the first point with like, what was the thing that kind of pushed me off? It was getting off methadone was my Mount Everest. And it wasn't until I set up this goal to do the ride, to film and everything, that that Mount Everest just became a small step to something bigger. And once I had that mental click where it was just like, I knew exactly where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do when I was off, that was the thing that was really the catalyst that helped me kind of get off and stay off. Sorry, I kind of got off track. What was,
Wait, you're in a movie now.
oh yeah, sorry. So I mean, I kind of experienced a lot. I've seen a lot over the years. That it made me kind of really curious as to what everything was like across the rest of the country. But so, I mean, I had no experience in film journalism in terms of interviewing people, public speaking, public relations. I hadn't rode a bike in 8 years, and I was tapering off methadone while I was having this idea to do this project. So that was a learning curve. I didn't have internet or much less a computer, so I'd take the bus to the Bowmanville, Ontario library about 5 days a week, 5 hours a day, use their internet computer, took out every book I could find on everything I was trying to learn about. And yeah, so I started making my way. Like my whole goal of it all was to kind of put a microscope on all the different variables of the opioid crisis, because and it's evolved since my film. My film's a little out of date at this point, but yeah, but part of it all was I wanted to show people that, like, no matter how deep or dark of a hole you're in, that you can come back from it. It's hard and it's a long journey, but you can come back from it and turn your life into something beautiful. So part of it all was doing all this stuff I had dreamt of doing over those years. And so I hammered a bucket of golf balls off the mountains in BC, jumped out of an airplane over Montreal, etc. So, but yeah, and I also understood that on my journey that it was going to be hard, but it won't be a fraction near as hard as those days of withdrawal.
I was actually going to ask you, because you probably hit some serious inclines, nasty weather. Like, you know, I think about some of the footage of Terry Fox and the inspiration of watching somebody just with their own, you know, ability, physical and mental, try to face that, just getting a little bit further and a little bit further. And you know what, like seriously, what was harder, you know, like the biking or the withdrawal?
Nothing will ever be as hard as opioids were to me. Nothing. I haven't done that right twice. I'm actually planning on doing one last one, which I was kind of lining up before COVID kicked off, but it'll happen, just not at the moment. But no, you know, the opioids was easily the most difficult thing I've done in my life. Yeah, I mean, like, I know I went through a very untraditional method of kind of getting off of it. And in fact, like after the ride was done, that's actually when I started to seek out different therapies and different group meetings and stuff like that, because like I knew that there was a little bit of there was something missing within all this that I actually went back and started I went through a cognitive behavioral therapy and just group meetings and stuff like that, which kind of filled a lot of the void that I was kind of missing throughout those initial recovery phases.
So even after the experience of getting off of opioids, methadone, cocaine, like getting off the drugs, even after the experience that you by yourself on a bicycle can literally ride coast to coast, you had another realization that like I need more, like I'm still requiring some sort of support and aid and you know, like do you remember how you felt or where you were when you had that realization?
I don't remember the specific moment, but I understood that, I mean, a lot of the underlying issue with my addiction was the trauma that I never really went back and resolved.
Right.
So that was just like, and then kind of as I learned so much through doing that film. And I mean, I interviewed a few dozen people and just learned a lot about myself within interviewing these people. And then when I got home shortly after, like I kind of came to the realization that I'm just like, yeah, there's still this kind of hole that you have. And you got to fix whatever that is, because it's a too slip. I'll die before I go back to opioids. But I mean, sorry.
Do you think, in hindsight, in your experience, do you think the the further therapy, like you say, dealing with the grief and loss, do you think there could have been a benefit of doing that while, say, on methadone maintenance?
Oh yeah, I mean, in retrospect, yeah, it gave me a lot of tools that I could have used very efficiently when I was on methadone or even tapering off methadone. I mean, even just the sense of community you get within a recovery group, and saying like, part of it all is like, yeah, you're like, no one understands me, and
Yeah.
and when you kind of get in the room with people who are like same, you kind of all understand each other. I mean, that gave me a sense of relief. And yeah, I mean, yeah, so it was definitely a backwards kind of journey but I mean, in retrospect, I think there would be huge benefit if to have acquired some of those programs during my methadone years, for sure.
Yeah, like you say, just some of the conversations your doctor's having, that's instilling a knowing that someone's actually interested and concerned about, beyond my amount of methadone that I need right now, what that can do for the individual. And if you could sort of design or talk to us about, in your own opinion, like, what's missing in our health system as far as resources, doctors that have a little bit more understanding of addictions, do they need to go through some sort of assessment to determine whether or not, they're ethically, following the individual's own process, or do they have their own agenda? Like what do we need more of for, and where would you say a family should research for their son who's on opioids, or their daughter or their cousin, whatever? Like what's that step they should do?
Well, I mean, I mean, I work in the Durham region where I live, the opioid task force. And one thing I've really advocated for is having just a hub where you can kind of go and get this information. I mean, half the battle with when you're kind of ready to make the leap off, you don't know where to go for help. And I mean, just knowing what those options are, I mean, looking back on it, I mean, had I understood what I had more than one option, I think that could have changed the game. I don't regret kind of the path I took, but I mean, it knowing more about what's out there is, I think, key to because I mean, when you hit that moment when you know you're ready to get that help, that is a very, very critical time in a person's recovery to kind of capitalize on that. So I mean, I think just understanding, having the addiction community or people seeking that help, knowing what is available to them is half the battle. The other side of that coin is that I can speak specifically with harm reduction and my doctor and everything like that. I mean, you have to have the right people in there. You can't, and not even to say necessarily that my first doctor was a bad doctor. It was just, there has to be more going into this than, and then to your point with like having those therapies as well while you're on methadone is a very big, I advocate for sure. Right. But I mean, on the physician side, I think that having a compassionate doctor who you see genuinely has your best interest in mind, can move mountains for you.
And just to know, like, what the doctor's agenda is. Are we talking taper? Are we talking 2 years on 120 milliliters? Are we talking the rest of my life? It's so often that we just sort of, oh, this is the person that's going to help me, and I'll do whatever they say, and that there's no real discussion after that. I've heard that story countless of times, and to be able to know, like, if that physician's agenda doesn't match yours, keep looking, keep doing your research.
I definitely think that on methadone through that journey, I mean, don't get me wrong, I wasn't ready to get off like for years and then had that. I mean, I had to be ready. And I think that's critical in anybody's journey in harm reduction is that I mean, there was a point, I think about 2 years in where I thought that was the rest of my life. Like I couldn't even imagine not a day going without it. Like it just wasn't a reality or possibility in my life. And I mean, so, I mean, like, say when I was in that stage, I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to try to taper off or anything like that. But I mean, there definitely comes a moment that when that person is ready, I think you should do everything in your power to work with somebody to help them facilitate that as a harm reduction doctor.
Yeah. We're on Vancouver Co-op Radio, 100.5 FM CFRO, talking with Chris Cull. So you went across Canada twice now. The first time was 2014, and that's the documentary you just described. Was the second time filmed as well?
No, I was doing that to raise awareness, but I did a lot of like public speaking just all the way across, and then a lot of media interviews to raise awareness about the opioid crisis,
which you can check out all on the inspirebyexample.ca website. Are you from Ontario?
Yeah, I live just east of Toronto.
Okay. So you've been across Canada. Where geographically would you say you must have witnessed just one of those moments of just absolute awe of our country? Can you tell us where you were?
Well, I had a handful of those times, and thankfully, kind of with my experience, when I see kind of a beautiful scene, like I take it in because I'm like, I fought really hard to get to this moment, and I just kind of perk up and get a smile on my face when I'm sitting there with a golf club, staring out at the Rockies with snow on top of it, and I'm just like, this is awesome. Or even jumping out of an airplane over Montreal, which was incredible. Like you're just falling through the air, and you're thinking you're good. This is great. Like I mean. Yeah. So on that side, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I've taken those moments as much as I can. I've had quite a few of them throughout the years. So I mean, I'm just grateful for my recovery. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we've lost a lot of great people over the years, and I mean, people who, without question, would have done a lot of good in the world. Perhaps if they had a little bit more time to figure out. And I mean, I won't stop until the day I die and that void that people left behind, because I mean, it's a void that can never be filled. And my next project I was working on is doing one last bike ride across Canada and making a TV show about recovery. So as my film was going and documenting all these stories from town to town, coast to coast, and going out and doing all the stuff I dreamt of, and I want to kind of take that template and then take people who are in recovery, who kind of went to the complete brink of destruction, then came back, and then take them to do something they've always wanted to do. So it's like a make-a-wish for mental health and addictions. I kind of want to do that across Canada as I'm moving. So that's the goal of the next project. But I'm also writing a book right now too and stuff like that. So it's kind of got
a few things I want to do.
Yeah. No, addiction set aside, what's it actually like to ride across Canada? Like, just say I don't even know issues. I just want to do it. Like, what's it like, and what actually took place? Like, did you stay in hotels every night? Like, what actually did you do? Like, if I wanted to go right across Canada tomorrow, what's your warning signs?
Well, mentally you'll get overwhelmed if you're thinking about the whole thing. Like it's always just, okay, just get to the next town, then get to the next town. And then for sleeping and stuff like that, I mean, I slept in 64 Walmart parking lots across Canada between my two rides. And somehow my story just always comes back to Walmart for some reason.
Yeah.
There's no more signs in the face.
Nothing will keep you fired up more than.
So you had a trailer, like an RV, follow you, and you slept in the RV and stuff like that?
So the first ride, I had this 1978 Jayco pop-up tent trailer that we had to MacGyver across the country, and in my film it actually becomes its own character because everything on it just keeps breaking. We ended up leaving the thing in Newfoundland because I'm like, this isn't even worth a ferry ride back. So Yeah, that was an adventure in itself. The thing leaked. I mean, it was just roughing it. But I mean, that was what I lived for and what I was dreaming about. Like I love that I was roughing it everywhere and like,
Yeah.
I don't have a shower today. Well, I'm gonna go find a lake and clean myself. Yeah, I mean, like it's just things like that, and just being on the road, and like I never took really a moment of it for granted. Like it was just like I understand. I'm very fortunate to have this second chance, and I'm gonna take advantage of every moment of it.
I mean, there's no interesting story that's all about ease and comfort and you know, like every story of every interesting person comes with hardship and struggles and anguish, um, you know, sometimes brought on by outside sources, and then there's those of us, I think, that understand if we knowingly walk towards that and knowing our capabilities of being able to do it, it can change our lives. And you know, whether it's a bike ride or you know, quitting some real addictive substances. I think I mean, that's always been the message that needs to be heard, is that it's not going to be easy. There is no easy solution to this. It's going to be painful, and you're gonna struggle, right? But then if we're going to do that, what are the resources that I need in my life that's going to make me want to get through this struggle and see something on the other side? I mean, that's what I'm getting out of your story right now. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal that, you know, you've done more than just quit the dope, you know, to raise awareness and like you say, keep doing this till your last breath, you know, is what's going to bring you the resolve. I can
Well,
sense.
I lost my entire 20s to it, and like I thought about it. I'm like, I don't want those years to go to waste. I want my life to mean something, and that was one of the biggest motivators for me, just to stay the path. And I mean, once I actually got off methadone, I mean, I had started training and everything before I was even off, and once I got off, and it gave me the sense of like, I just did that, and I'm like, if I can accomplish that, like, what can I do? And that kind of really boosted my self-confidence. Like, don't get me wrong, I have a very structured routine to keep myself motivated and keep myself in shape and keep my mind in the right place and stuff like that. And without those tools, I mean, that everybody's path is different through it all. Like, I mean, there's no one size fits all solution, and nobody's path is really wrong. It's just that you got to find what works for you. And yeah, it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be hard. But I mean, the silver lining of it is within that struggle, you find out so much more about yourself than you would if you're just seeking the comfortable road. And I mean, I enjoy learning a lot about myself, and I learn, like, I mean, and just kind of understanding how my brain works better by pushing these struggles and seeing kind of how I react to stuff and how I and what I'm capable of. And I'm always trying to push that boundary because it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of wired into me at this point where I'm just like, yeah, I did the documentary, but I think I could do a better job knowing what I know now. And then that kind of was part of the second ride, and it's definitely part of the third ride. But I mean, I want this to be not so much the opioid crisis as a whole, but just addiction recovery. And I want to hear people's stories, and I want to have them experience that, like, that sense of reward of like taking them out to do something they've always dreamed of, whether that's jumping out of an airplane or whatever it may be. So it's I don't know. I just think a lot of people could benefit from hearing people's stories who came back from it all, and people who can identify with those stories and say, "Oh, that's exactly what I'm going through. This is how they navigated it." And like, oh, well, you know what I mean? Just plant the seeds of ideas and also that hope into the equation. So.
Right on. Well, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, definitely.
Great product.
And reading the book, we'll have you back on the show when the book comes out. And you're in Ottawa, correct? Or are you in Alberta?
No, I'm just east of Toronto in Oshawa.
Oh, so you're in Oshawa. So yeah. Can you do me a favor? Can you go to recoverymonthcanada.ca if you haven't already, and fill in the form, just put your name and postal code, and send your MP a letter automatically. And if you can, get your friends to do it too and share it on Facebook, because quite a few people. We're trying to get September proclaimed as Recovery Month Canada. Not sure if you heard the beginning of the show or seen it on social media, but we're trying to get just like they have it in the States, and it's sad that Canada still has not tried to take a look at what Recovery Month could look like. So recoverymonthcanada.ca, all you gotta do is add your postal code, your MP will automatically get an email. And did you do it yet?
I haven't yet, no.
All right. Well, you have to do it
Hold it,
now. You have to do it now.
I promise, brother.
Okay, yeah. We need some support in other provinces and so forth. And you know what? You never know. It might just happen, and we're hoping it does. Thanks for being on the show. So, what's the website, social media, all that kind of stuff? How can people get in touch with you?
So, inspiredbyexample.ca is my website. You can have a clothing line as well. There are my handles on Instagram and Twitter at inspire_Canada, and then Chris Cull on Facebook, and yeah. So I don't know. I'll be in touch with you guys before kind of everything with the show, and maybe we can meet up and
yeah, for sure, definitely. Awesome.
Right on.
Well, Darren, thanks. Another great show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm glad you guys made it through these turbulent few months there. So hopefully we'll kind of meet back up again in Ottawa or wherever, and just get back to work. But yeah, and also if there's anything you need help with the recovery month, please, by any means,
share it on your network. Let everybody know to send a letter to their MP.
Will do, brother.
All right.
That was Chris Call, Inspired by Example. Thanks for listening, everybody, on the radio and checking us out on Facebook. Again, we are on Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. Another great show. Keep on the riding there, Chris. Thanks, pal.
Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Until next week, Talk Recovery Radio brought to you by New West Recovery, Last Door, Westminster House. See ya.